It was big news when a giant cruise ship capsized at sea. 10 years later, it was completely abandoned and still lying on the underwater rocks where it was stranded. Two young marine divers, Alex and Ryan, decided to get a look inside, but they never expected to find what they found inside. Because when Alex and Ryan entered the cruise ship, they suddenly heard a loud scream in the distance. Alex looked at the rusty old door. He knew the scream came from there. Unfortunately, it was locked, so they had to try and break it open. Ryan looked around him with his flashlight to see if he could find a pipe of some sort when he suddenly saw a big crowbar lying on the ground. Ryan quickly picked the crowbar up and ran back to the door. He leaned back, knowing he only had one shot at getting this lock open, and slammed the crowbar down onto the lock. A loud bang thundered through the ship. The lock fell to the ground, and Alex quickly flung the door open. They could not believe what they saw inside. Now the screaming suddenly made so much sense to them. They knew they had to call the police immediately. But what did the divers find on the cruise ship? Where did the strange screaming come from? And why did the police need to get involved? But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Alex and Ryan knew that nobody was allowed near the half-sunken cruise ship, but they did not care. But from the moment they saw it, they wanted to get on it to check it out. And so, the young divers set out in the early morning, when nobody was going to stop them. The ship didn't look very sturdy, and who knows what they would find inside. It could be very dangerous, and if something happened to one of them, there was no way they would get back to shore in time. But Ryan didn't listen. He had already started looking for a way inside. As the ship was tilted, part of the upper deck lay in the water, so they could climb onto it and search for a door. But they had to be very careful. One slip up, and they would slide straight into the water. Ryan fastened their boat to one of the cruise's railings and gave one final look at Alex. But Alex just sighed and shook his head. He intended not to go inside, but once he saw Ryan climbing up the deck, he knew he couldn't leave him on his own. So he took a deep breath and went after Ryan. If only he knew then what a bad idea that was. As soon as they stepped inside the cruise, they could feel the eerie atmosphere of the ship. It was silent and dark, and the only sounds were the creaking of the metal framing and the lapping of the water. "Wow," they both said in unison. "We should go back," Alex said. But Ryan had already left. "Wait up!" Alex yelled as he ran after Ryan. His voice echoed through the remote halls of the ship. As Alex and Ryan explored the abandoned cruise ship, they came across many rooms, each with its own eerie atmosphere. Some rooms were locked, but luckily for them, not all the rooms were. They first entered the main hall, which was grand and spacious, with high ceilings all around and a large staircase leading up to the upper decks. However, the room was dark and dusty, and the furniture was covered in cobwebs. They could see the harrowing signs of neglect and abandonment everywhere. They then moved on to the cabins, which were small and cramped, with 2 or 4 beds in each room. But the beds were unmade, and the sheets were stained with mildew and mold. They could see suitcases still open and clothes strewn around the room, as if the passengers had left in a hurry. As Alex and Ryan walked through the empty halls of the ship, they suddenly heard a strange noise. "Did you hear that?" Alex said with a trembling voice, but Ryan seemed unfazed. He just shrugged his shoulders and moved on. But Ryan would soon find out what was really going on. After a little while, Ryan wanted to go down even further to the lower parts of the ship. There was a small stairway that could lead them there, but it was pitch black, so they got out their phones and used their flashlights to guide them. And as they got lower, the noise started to get louder. It sounded like a faint, muffled scream, and scared the life out of both Alex and Ryan. They looked at each other with fear in their eyes, but knew they had to go further to investigate. Suddenly, the staircase ended, and they were in the mechanical section of the ship. They could hear the water drip down, and there was a little layer of water they had to walk through. They tried to be as quiet as possible so that they could follow the muffled sound, but the sound echoed through the ship. This made locating where the sound came from even harder. They walked deeper and deeper into the ship, and Alex was full of anxiety. He knew they could never find their way back if something happened to them. Different worst-case scenarios shot through his mind as he gazed over the wet and rusty walls of the ship. What had he gotten himself into? After walking for a little while, they finally reached an end. They knew they couldn't be at the bottom of the ship, so why was there a dead end? But then Alex noticed something. "There's a little handle in the middle of the wall there," he pointed. "I see a door." Ryan grabbed the handle and pulled as hard as he could, but the door was stuck. He put his ear against the door and listened closely. "The sound is definitely coming from here," he said. Alex stood beside him and also put his ear against the door. "I can hear it, but how will we get in?" Suddenly, they heard something that almost made their hearts stop. A boat was approaching the ship, and they could hear muffled sounds of men angrily speaking to each other. It sounded like they were also getting onto the cruise ship. "I knew this was a bad idea," Alex said. They knew they had to act fast. They rushed back to the stairwell, but as they started to walk upstairs, they heard loud footsteps coming down the stairs. So they quickly turned around, put their flashlights out, and hid behind the stairwell. They held their breath as the men came closer and closer. The sound of the heavy footsteps on the metal staircase thundered through the ship. They watched as 3 men came down the stairs and walked straight to the locked door. As the men opened the door, the muffled scream got louder, and Alex got a glimpse of what was going on inside. He whispered, "We have to get out of here, and quickly." Ryan looked at him with a worried look on his face. "What did you see, Alex? Who was inside that room?" But Alex didn't say anything. That scream sounded like it came from a woman. "We have to help her," Ryan sighed, as he knew Alex was right. But this situation just got a whole lot worse. Those men didn't only outnumber Alex and Ryan, but they were also a lot bigger and stronger than them. And to make matters even worse, Alex noticed one of them carried a gun. They decided to call the police, but knew it would be a while until they arrived. So Alex mustered up all his courage and agreed with Ryan to see what the men were doing behind the closed door. They slowly got up and walked over to the door while listening closely to what the men were saying. "Someone is on this ship," one of the men said. "Did you see how the lock was broken? She couldn't have done that from here. Their boat is still docked to the ship, so they must still be here somewhere." Another man said, "You stay here, and I'll search the ship." Alex and Ryan quickly got back under the staircase and watched from the dark as one man stepped out of the room and walked upstairs. Alex noticed a glimpse of a gun tucked away in the man's belt and swallowed at the thought of standing face to face with it. They listened as the man's footsteps slowly faded away. "Chill, Alex," Ryan answered. "I need you to stay alert and stop freaking out." Alex sighed as he knew Ryan was right. His heart was pounding in his chest, and he couldn't wait for the police to arrive. "All right," Ryan said quietly, "I have a plan. We have to lure that man out of the room and, at the same time, distract the man upstairs searching for us." Ryan said, "But how can we do that? We're only with the 2 of us," Alex answered. "Just follow my lead." It looked like Ryan was very confident in his plan, but Alex wasn't so sure yet. Ryan looked around him in the dark. Alex was confused about what he was searching for, but soon realized when Ryan held up a big rock. Alex was about to say something, but Ryan held his finger to his lips and threw the rock at the stairs. A loud bang echoed through the ship. Alex's eyes widened, and Ryan hurried back into the dark. The man left behind in the room rushed outside and ran straight to the stairs. "I've got them!" he shouted. The man ran up the stairs, and Alex and Ryan waited until the sound of his footsteps faded away. When they could only hear the muffled sounds of footsteps, Alex and Ryan emerged from the dark and ran to the room. Ryan pulled the heavy door open and got inside. But just as Alex was about to get in, he heard the men returning downstairs. Alex froze, not knowing what to do. He eventually hid behind something just in time for the men to return. "I really thought I had them," one man said. "I told you to stay inside the room with her, dumbass," the other answered. "I'm locking you inside with her, and when I find the intruders, I'll come back for you." Alex hoped Ryan was able to hide. The man grabbed a new lock from his pocket and locked his companion inside the room. He then clipped the keys to his belt and went back upstairs. Alex waited for a few minutes, unsure of what to do next, when suddenly a loud noise came from the room. It sounded like someone was rearranging the room, but why? Suddenly, Alex realized what was going on. They were fighting. Alex quickly put his ear to the door and listened. Ryan and the man were definitely fighting, and he could hear a woman screaming too, but it sounded like she had something inside her mouth. Alex's body filled with adrenaline. All he could think about was saving his dear friend. Without thinking, he ran upstairs and began shouting for the man. "Hey, where are you, pal?" Heavy footsteps ran his way, and before Alex knew it, he stood face to face with the man, who looked very, very angry. "So," the man said eventually, "you are the one sneaking around this ship. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, you know." The man was very intimidating, and Alex almost peed his pants. But Alex also knew the only way to get Ryan out of that room was with the keys hanging from the man's belt. Alex had no idea how he had done it. Everything moved so fast that he handled it without thinking. But he suddenly had the keys in his hands, and the man lay knocked out on the ground. Alex had no time to spare, so he quickly ran downstairs and unlocked the door. He expected to find Ryan standing triumphantly over the other man's knocked-out body, but he couldn't be more wrong. As he swung open the door, he was greeted by the other man's angry face. This was bad. It almost felt like an action movie. Within seconds, Alex had scanned the room. He knew where Ryan lay. He knew someone was sitting in the middle of the room. And he knew he was about to get punched in the face by a man almost twice his size. But somehow, he managed to defuse the situation. Alex stood in the doorway with confidence. "Hi there," he said calmly. "Your partner is upstairs, knocked out." But the man stayed unfazed. He had a dangerous look on his face. He was about to swing at Alex when the man suddenly fell to the ground. As the man fell, he revealed Ryan standing behind him with the crowbar in his hands. He had gotten up from the ground as the man stood facing Alex and, without his knowledge, had smacked him on the head. Both men were now knocked out, but they still had to hurry. They could wake up any minute. Alex and Ryan hurried to the woman. She was forcefully bound to a chair with duct tape covering her mouth. Ryan carefully pulled the duct tape from her face, and she immediately cried out, "Please, hurry! Get me out of here!" Alex untied her hands, and Ryan untied her legs. They could hear the police sirens from a distance. They helped the woman up, as she was too weak to stand on her own, and together they walked back to the boats. They put the woman in their own boat, and Ryan grabbed some leftover rope to bind the men together. The police finally arrived, and they were shocked to see what they were called to. They never expected to see this. They quickly hurried inside and arrested the two men. They got the woman to safety, and Alex and Ryan also had to come with them to the police station. Alex and Ryan were interrogated at the station, and they had to explain everything that had happened. They weren't supposed to be on the ship in the first place, so they were worried the police would arrest them for it. But instead, the police reacted very differently than they expected. Instead of arresting Alex and Ryan, they rewarded them for their bravery. It turned out that the woman they saved wasn't like any ordinary woman. She was the governor's daughter, and she had been held hostage for a few days now. The men had demanded money, but suddenly broke contact. If it weren't for Alex and Ryan, the woman would probably be dead right now. The governor praised the young men for saving his daughter and rewarded them with a big check. Alex and Ryan were still shaken up by what had happened. They couldn't believe this was real life. Alex and Ryan received a check from the governor so big, they decided to travel the world for a while. The scary ordeal scarred the men, but it didn't stop them from going on more adventures. They lived the rest of their lives like there was no tomorrow and enjoyed every minute of it.